Hey everybody, my name is Ed Trevors. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm an Anglican priest in the Diocese of Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island. I get to serve in the beautiful town of Shelburne, Nova Scotia in the awesome parish of Christchurch Shelburne that sits on the ancestral and on the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. I give thanks for you all every day. I thank God especially for everything that you're sharing with me and teaching me in the comments and for how you're interacting with one another. It's absolutely amazing to see. I cherish it. It's wonderful. Today, we're going to talk about what happens when we paint other people with a particular brush. I meant to make this as an anniversary video on December 6th because of what that date represents in Canadian history. I chose to release it early because I believe it's an important video, not only because it shares the story of a tragedy that happened, but also I hope it informs us about what is currently happening and what could happen. On December 6th, 1989, a man, walked into École Polytechnique in Montreal, armed with a hunting knife and a semi-automatic weapon. He proceeded to kill 14 females. He injured 10 more, and he injured 4 men before turning the gun on himself. This was the single largest mass shooting in Canadian history, I believe, up until this year, when we had a tragedy happen here in Nova Scotia. Everybody agrees that this person was psychologically unbalanced, that there was something wrong, that he was not okay. He was ill, he was emotionally unstable, that there were lots of other things happening besides just, when it happened, I remember the big thing at the time was it was video games. Video games led him to do this. Violent movies led him to do this. That was around the same time as heavy metal causes this kind of thing. Well, he actually wrote about it in his manifesto, in his letters. He spoke about it when he was moving through that school, that witnesses remembered hearing him say, this was his war against feminism. He was taking the fight to them. Here's a lonely person, probably ostracized, and blames a particular group of people for everything that he's feeling and everything that his life is not. I'm certain that there isn't a pundit or a journalist or media personality or celebrity on the planet who would want their words to be taken by somebody who is imbalanced and used in this way, interpreted this way. They would never want to think that what they said led to the death of 14 women. They would never want to think that they led to the injuries of 10 others and 4 men. But this person at some point was hearing about the dangers of feminism. How feminism was ruining the family, how feminism was ruining lives, how feminism was destroying masculinity. And he took the fight to them in his way. Someone out there shared a message in such a way that for this person who did this horrible thing, these were not people, they were not women, they were the enemy. They were feminists. They were less than human. We still see the same thing in our media today, and we see very similar results. Wasn't it Texas where a person walked into a Walmart to fight illegal immigration and killed How many people? Recently I read the headline on Fox News, and it said, homeless man charged for church stabbings had been deported 3 times but never reported to immigration officials. That was their headline. Homeless man charged in church stabbing had been deported 3 times but never turned over to immigration. Now, when you read that, a homeless guy walked into a church, stabbed a bunch of people during services, and he was an illegal immigrant. When you read the article, you find out that indeed he had been deported 3 times and he was an illegal immigrant who kept coming across the border. But you also find out that he had a long history of violence. This was not a one-time thing. He had a long history of violence, including domestic violence and violence with weapons. He was homeless. This church that he was in was a shelter for homeless people. His encounter, his attack, the violence that he perpetrated that day was against a few other homeless guys and one of the workers. Now, this isn't to minimize what he did. What he did was horrible. But the headline makes it clear that we should be afraid of homeless people. It makes it clear that illegal immigrants are doing this kind of thing. No, this is one person who chose to do this. You can't label all homeless people like this. You can't label all immigrants like this. You can't label all illegal immigrants like this. The headline was meant to be inflammatory. What wide brushes like this do, it paints entire groups of people in a particular light that allows you and I to see them as something less than ourselves. Now, we've talked about this before, but it allows us to see them as something other. They're not like us. They're the homeless. They're the Democrats. They're the liberals. They're the right. They're the progressives. They're the conservatives. They're the Christians. They're the Jews. They're the atheists. It doesn't matter. Whenever we paint somebody with that brush, we absolutely dehumanize them. We make them the other out there. Those people. And when we paint them as the other out there, there's always the opportunity, there's always the possibility that someone will pick up that message and they will decide that those people out there are the ones who are responsible for all of their misery. They're responsible for their life being exactly the way it is. They're responsible for their life not turning out the way it should have turned out. And they will take matters into their own hand. We see it in mass shootings. We see it in mass violence. We see it in some of the protests that we're seeing across the world. We see it in the populist uprising of some of our world leaders, our world politicians. They're not leaders. We paint the other. We show the other to be out there, something different, something apart from us. We paint them as destructive. We shouldn't be surprised when somebody chooses to do these hateful things. The tragedy, the massacre at École Polytechnique in Montreal, is something we can still learn from. It's something that we can still allow to shape our future so that we don't see these kinds of things again. Despite how long ago it was, let's not forget, so that we don't keep reliving the same brutal past. over and over and over again. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you, and may you always know the peace of being in God's presence. Today, let's remember the victims of École Polytechnique. Let's remember the victims of every mass violent act. Let's remember all of those who have been set aside and away as the other. Amen.